The record is very clear that these two entities do compete. They compete aggressively and across many areas and service lines. The parties themselves, other providers, and our experts confirm this existing state of competition. So Dr. Jack Elias, who was once, I believe, the dean of the Brown Medical School, was tapped by President Paxson as the point person for the university on the merger, described to us in a statement or elsewhere that Lifespan and Care New England are competing all over the place. They're not the hot dog in the bun. They're competing all over the place. Other hospital systems. Landmark, South County Hospital, they know it. This is what they do. As the CFO of South County Health told us, Lifespan and Care New England strongly compete against each other. And this competition benefits patients. The evidence we obtained from the parties throughout this investigation demonstrates what I've just said. They acknowledge that they compete head-to-head for various services, including what's up here on the screen: cardiology, oncology, orthopedics, spine surgery, thoracic surgery, and emergency medicine. This is another way of showing the same thing. Dr. Flum, our expert, shows a significant overlap in the inpatient acute care services that Lifespan and CNE offer each other. So basically, what this shows, based on discharges at CNE and a Lifespan on the left, where there's an overlap in the services that they provide based on the discharges of the patients that are receiving hospital care from them. There's a significant overlap in what they do. They are not complementary. They compete. And that competition, as we've talked about, is good for Rhode Islanders. So if you think about this merger, if we were to approve this merger, what have we done? We started in the beginning by saying, look, compared to everybody else who's not involved in this transaction, they already have a lot. Look at those bed numbers. They've already got a ton of those beds. They've already got a ton of the market separately. You put them together, what do you get? Number one, they're not competing with one another. Number two, who can compete with them? Who can compete with them at that point? They're not competing with each other, so you lose all of that competition. We're going to get to that. You lose all of the good effect of that competition between the two of them. And now that they're combined, who competes with them? Look at those beds. Most of those other hospitals don't break 100 beds. Westerly and South County Hospital don't break 100 beds. Kent alone has over 300. Okay? So again, intuitively, you don't have to be an antitrust expert to understand, I think, the concern here. So what does this mean for us? What does it mean for you and your families? Well, what it means is you're going to spend more for health care, okay? Because health insurance companies, and look, you know, I fight with insurance companies all the time. Those of you who follow this office know we're always objecting to their rate increases. I know, Richard, you follow that. So I have no love, you know, for the way insurance companies raise their rates. It's not personal. I just think they go up way too much. But when you talk to insurers, they know what this means, that their ability to have any leverage in negotiating rates. Remember, those rates are what's passed on to Rhode Islanders. It's going to be very difficult for somebody who has 80% market share. And across the country, over and over and over again, studies show and experts recognize that mergers that result in high concentration, as we have seen here based on these numbers, not as an academic exercise, based on the data that I showed you a moment ago, that market concentration, high market concentration, leads to increased healthcare costs. Professor Martin Gaynor of Carnegie Mellon testified before the U.S. Senate some time ago, not long ago. And the quote is there. And these studies consistently show that when hospital consolidation is between close competitors, it raises prices and by substantial amounts. Dr. Flum, our expert hired here by us to examine Rhode Island data, confirms what has happened nationally will happen here. He concludes that the increased leverage means a new system that can increase prices starting out as at least 9%. And we all know that insurers don't eat those costs. Insurers pass those costs on to consumers through higher premiums in out-of-pocket costs, whether you're buying your healthcare on the individual market or whether you're a small business or a large one, buying it for your employees. Consumers, small businesses, and employers are all going to have to pay those costs. We have here a quote from a small business owner, which I won't read. It's there on the slide, and you'll have a copy of the slideshow. But his words, I think, echo the words of many small business owners. That as costs go up, my ability to deliver my business to consumers becomes harder. My ability to pay my workers becomes harder. My ability to run my business with the appropriate level of staff becomes harder. The pandemic has made that worse. We've all seen what staff shortages have done to businesses around the state. But this is another example of how high costs harm business. Now, we hear about competition and its benefits around price. We hear that a lot. But antitrust law is meant to do more than just keep prices down, to keep healthcare costs down. The DOJ FTC merger guidelines have this statement in them, and I commend it to you because I think it really captures what it is I'm trying to say. It said enhanced market power can be captured in non-price terms that adversely affect consumers, including reduced product quality, reduced product variety, reduced service, and diminished innovation. But I understand that is a broad and in some ways academic statement. And so we'll channel our inner Missouri and we'll show you what this means, okay? We'll be the show me state today here in Rhode Island, okay? The existing competition among these institutions has forced them to deliver better service, better access, better quality to Rhode Islanders. There are a lot of examples. They're in our decision. I'm just going to highlight a few of them for you. Hospital-driven infections, okay? When Kent Hospital saw its ratings drop relative to that issue, they purchased robots to sterilize their hospital rooms between patient discharges. Why? Because these two parties compare their ratings. If we're negative to this one, well, we need to react. Our investigation showed that over and over and over and over. They respond to one another. When one's rising, the other one moves to keep up. When one's falling, the other one takes advantage of that to go faster and better. And that makes it better for Rhode Islanders. That's what competition is about. Cardiology services. Kent, a number of years ago, started an initiative to improve its cardiology services. They started working with Brigham and Women to do so. And as a result, Lifespan, recognizing competition in the marketplace, they knew they had a problem dealing with patients, being accessible to patients. And so they took steps not only to improve their cardiology game, but to make it easier for patients to schedule appointments and access their system. Why? They saw danger in the marketplace. Danger in the marketplace is competition, and that competition helps you. Thoracic services can again made investments, and Lifespan responded by hiring a world-class thoracic surgeon specializing in minimally invasive robotic surgeries. Better for patients. Does that happen if Kent isn't up in their game? You up your game, I up mine. The Yankees get a starting pitcher, the Red Sox better get one, and vice versa. It's pretty basic. It's pretty basic. This slide here just repeats what I've already said. The competition is good. It's good in terms of price, and it's good in terms of quality. There are lots of things that putting these parties together would give them in terms of market power. And few of those are, they just have a lot of discretion to manage their work in ways which would not necessarily benefit Rhode Islanders. So, for example, you control 80% of the market. You can decide you're only going to do certain services here and not there. What does that mean? Rhode Islanders have to go farther to get those services. There are other examples of that, and they're here. But the bottom line is this. When you control the market, you're not competing with each other. Nobody can compete with you. You can do what you want. And when any business can do whatever it wants, that's not good for consumers. And look, this is the bottom line of our decision. It's ultimately somewhere, it's a long decision. I'm not sure exactly where it lies. But it basically makes the point I just made. You put a lot of market concentration in one place, it's bad for Rhode Islanders. They don't have to compete with each other. We've demonstrated where that competition in the past has been helpful, and there's no one to compete against them either. You know, we talked a little bit about GAC, the general acute care market. I just want to go back to something we started out in the beginning. We looked at the other markets as well. We know they're competing in general acute care, inpatient hospital care, but they're competing elsewhere as well. Again, outpatient surgery markets, inpatient behavioral health, accountable care organizations. They have three, if they were to be put together, have a tremendous amount of market share if you put those three large ACOs together. And the labor market for nurses, they would also control a big chunk of the registered nurse hospital market. I want to pause here, and I'll probably get to it later as well. But I understand that labor here supports this merger. And I have tremendous admiration for union leadership, and more than that, the men and women in labor who have been working in these hospitals, keeping us safe, not just during COVID, but well before COVID, and they will continue to do it well beyond. And I applaud the concessions that they were able to get from these hospitals in exchange for their support of this merger. I'll only say this, and I said it before. We had the benefit of records, of statements under oath that nobody else had other than the FTC and the Department of Health. And that put us in, I believe, a unique position relative to anybody else to weigh the potential harms of this merger. Now, we get asked occasionally about conditions. Well, what can the Attorney General of the Department of Health do to solve for this problem? The reason I've laid the problem out the way I have is because it's not a small problem. It's a big problem. So how do we address the problem? Are there conditions? The Hospital Conversion Act allows us to put conditions in place to solve for problems. That's what we did in Prospect with Fatima and Roger Williams Hospital. We solved for financial weakness by putting $80 million in escrow in our control, this office's control, to keep those hospitals going for at least 5 years. We're able to solve for that financial weakness. How do we solve for 80% market share? How do we solve for that? One thing that has, I don't know what the right word is, has caused me pause, given me pause, as I've heard others talk about the benefits of this merger. Okay? And there are plenty who don't think it's a good idea, but many of those who have often said, this is a great idea as long as. This is a great idea, but. This is a great idea provided we. Okay? Ask yourselves, how many of those people have told you what the as long is, what the but is, or what the provided is? Okay? It's all well and good to say you support something as long as. And we've invited those people. Share with me the conditions that you think will work. And it's the conclusion of this office that to the extent any have done that those conditions will not solve for this